Well, good morning, everybody. We're here today for an oral history interview with two sisters, Miss Pam Rentz and Miss Bonnie Stam. And the interviewer is Stanton O'Neill, and I'm a volunteer and friend, although I've learned a lot of new things about y'all. Today is October 20th, 2017, and we're interviewing here in the Landhouse Museum. So, ladies, I know that you are sisters, and your maiden name was Pierson, and you grew up in Pierson.
Yes.
So I think there may be some story here that you might want to try to fill us in on some of that, sort of a family tree background.
In Pierson, the 5 brothers came in 1876, and they had adjoining 160-acre pieces of property, and
each of them had
160 each. Yeah. So
unfortunately, we do not have very much of that left today.
No,
but we've got more than we can handle right now.
Yes,
Bonnie
we do.
and I still.
We're trying to keep the farm going.
Yeah.
So
Tell us more about the original settlers there.
The original settlers, after the terrible freeze in 1898-99, they left, most of the brothers left, except for Nels, who was an uncle to, uncle. And then our great-grandfather, Peter, stayed. He kind of stuck it out, and he's on the original home place, the homestead, and so we lived in that home. That was the third home on that property that they built. There had been a log cabin, we understand, which we never knew.
Near the lake, there's a Lake Alice,
And then there was another home, which we know about the vicinity of that. And then the home that is still standing. It was built in 1911, and Bonnie and I grew up in it.
Yes.
And
had quite an idyllic but not perfect childhood there. But
we think it was idyllic at
Yes.
the time because we didn't have to lock the doors.
Party line we talked about.
That was cute. The party line. That was back when we were younger. They had you'd have a certain ring, and if it was your ring, you'd pick up and you could talk.
Hopefully,
well, you could pick
that's
up
the
anyway.
only one you picked up.
Yeah. Unless you wanted to listen in and have some gossip to
I'm
share.
sure that never happened.
Gossip
Oh,
to
no,
share.
not us.
But then I think we had our own line, and then there were some people that kept a party line because we were a little bit. We felt like we were a little special, our
Pierson's
family.
from Pierson, but
we thought, our daddy and mother thought we were special.
I try to downplay that now. Yeah, really.
But
Well, the freeze of 1894-95, that wiped out almost all the citrus in the whole state. So you're saying that
94, 95 is, what did I say? 90.
Well,
Yeah.
you were
Anyway,
close,
that was right. Yeah.
So what did your family that stayed? That was Peter or
Peter and Nels,
Peter
and Nels was
okay.
kind of.
What did they do to react to that?
Well, now Peter was had a nursery, and he grew rubber trees, and he grew
flowers,
all sorts of different fern. I mean, not fern, not then,
No.
not until 1904. They got, and 1905 was the fern experiment, but we'll talk about that a little later. But he was a grower, and he was a farmer, and he was a very hard worker and
a visionary. I think in a way he's supposedly the father of the fern industry.
Okay, so
and
he turned
Pierson.
fern as a diversification. Did he
Well,
do
that
more?
was just part of it. He started with, he had roses and, like Pam said, 500,000 rubber plants, which is almost unbelievable, but that's
at
true.
At the old home place today, you can see Killarney Farms. And Bonnie and I, there's an arch as you go into the up the sidewalk
to the front door.
And that has been there for
Was that the name of the company?
That's what we named the company after Daddy died.
But that's
Killarney
the
Farm
name of
LLC.
He named it the home. Peter named it for his favorite rose, the Killarney rose.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and it is still, and so Bonnie and I decided, well, what are we going to call it? Because Daddy didn't call it that.
We're talking about our company.
Our company, after Daddy died.
Passed away.
And in 2004.
Right.
Daddy
Passed
died because
away.
Mother had passed away earlier. So we have kept the farm, we have kept the house, we have kept, we have a lake cabin too that Daddy had. So we've kept all those, and we have them in 3 separate LLCs, and of course, to try, just we weren't ready to sell it right after.
Right.
It's going to
Daddy,
be hard.
neither of
We
us.
think about it, but
Yeah.
it's really hard to let go of a legacy.
We know DeLand's known as the Athens of Florida. Pierson's known as the
Fern
Fern
capital
of
of the world.
And your family had a lot to do with
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
So can you go back,
Our,
let's talk about the Fern. Where
well-
did that come from? How did that,
Well,
how did their experiment go?
our grandfather, Eugene, Peter's son,
Okay.
brought 10,000 plants. They were plants. Asparagus is plants, doesn't have spores, not a true fern.
Not the leatherleaf fern.
No,
No.
those have spores.
No,
but
that wasn't
he brought that in 1904. And
1904, and they planted it in 1905. I mean, the crop was 1905, and it was
planted
like
it,
an experiment, and it has been. Daddy has even been, my father, Peter R. Pierson, who's not Peter Pierson was
Peter Russell,
his grandfather, but yeah, and he has been interviewed for the New York Times. He's been interviewed so many times about fern, and we have those newspapers and we have all those clippings. But it was Asparagus plumosus, which is still grown. It's it's a lacy. It is not a true fern, and that was what they grew.
That's how it started.
And they grew it up
from Cromwell, Connecticut,
Connecticut.
from A.N. Pierson, who had very vast nursery there. The brother of Peter. Yeah, that was Peter's brother, A.N. Pierson. That's why they came. They came from Skåne, Sweden, which was southern Sweden, and stayed in Cromwell, and then came to Pierson in 76.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. But then they first planted it and where they were told where it was low and wet, didn't thrive. The plants didn't thrive at all. And so then they moved it up to higher ground, which Peter, again, doesn't give up. He tried it.
Yeah. It was an experiment,
and then it thrived on the higher ground. And that's the start of the fern industry.
How soon was it before other people in the area started growing?
I'm not certain because we weren't there.
Pretty quickly, I think, when
I
they
think
saw
it
that
was
it
something
was
that caught
profitable.
on.
And I have a picture of the original 1905 slat house fernery where they had strings.
Explain the slat house.
Well, it's got slats going across.
Is that a wooden slat?
Yes, and they have string, for the lack of a better word.
Well, they had that
went
to
up
shade
the
for
ceiling.
shade because you cannot grow it out in the sun.
Right.
And
Shade
even
house.
today, the slat house is a modified what they have now with saran, which is to shade the fern. But this particular one that we have the photo of is real high. It's like high ceiling slat house.
Right.
But that was because instead of growing the fern or the asparagus low, which they do now, and it would go up. It would spiral up on
those strings.
On strings,
Yeah.
they'd have
The ceiling
strings.
was like, what, 20 feet? It was really
I would
high.
say
high.
so. You
It
can,
was high.
yeah.
So it grew vertically.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they would take it and wrap it around. And I don't know if they would ship it. They would ship it up to A.N. Pierson in Connecticut, Cromwell, Connecticut, and he was the Rose King in America supposedly, and he was the one. I can remember Daddy saying that. And we used to have a big poster about that. And they would put that in with the arrangements, and that was the rose arrangements and all that and other
I can
arrangements.
remember the shipping of it was
That was
with
fun.
Daddy. They'd
Fun.
ice it. We'd go up to the ice house, which was downtown Pierson.
Oh, geez. If you can call downtown
And
Pierson
hunks of
downtown.
ice like this. And then we'd put the ice in with it and
they
pack
take
it.
the-
And now,
No, it was a big block.
no.
Okay.
First
big
it
block.
was cut by the workers, which
And then they'd take I can
and then
remember
they'd
Daddy.
wrap it, and they were so fast they could put
But I'm
string
talking about
around
the
it.
ice.
Oh,
When
yeah,
they
well,
take,
yeah. And
they take
first
the
they-
ice pick.
Yeah, cut the fern, then they take this huge like pincher thing or ice thing, and
forgot.
lift it up and put it in with a fern, and then and it was wooden slats or wooden pieces of thin wood, and then take it, and they shipped it by rail.
But it was
because we had a depot, and then when the depot.
Yeah, everything went by train.
I think the
Yeah.
rail came
Everything went by
to
train
Pierson
before.
in the early
In
90s.
fact,
now
that's how
it's
Pierson
trucks.
got its name.
It's the big trucks, the Armalini trucks or something that,
Yeah,
that ships
ships
it.
it.
But that used to be the little wooden, Bonnie's right, because I can remember going out there to the place and where they'd put it, and the fern, and it was 20 bunches to whatever you call that. Well,
A
Bonnie and I
bunch,
never
a
did
bunch.
it.
It was
to
a- no,
it was a bunch.
it was a
20
bunch.
sprays. 20
Sprays.
sprays to a
It's
20
coming back to us.
It's
20 sprays to a bunch.
Well, it might be because Daddy never let us out there to
Well,
do
no,
it.
he let me.
Well, he thought I was
Because
the
I was supposed to be-
princess. I was the
I was
older one, and
supposed
I
to
was
be
the
a boy.
princess.
That's one thing. Daddy
jeez.
was sad that he felt like
Oh, dear.
he was the last. See, if I'd have been a boy, that wouldn't have been the case. But he was the last Pierson in
I don't think
this
he
area.
was sad you were not.
Well,
a
no, I
boy.
read something that he was a
So
little
he
sad.
tried to get you to do a few boy things.
Yeah, I
She
had
got
a
to
course.
drive the truck.
Yeah, I got learned
She got to drive the truck through the grove, and I didn't get to do that.
The Willis, about 9 years old.
Whoa.
In the groves, though, I was very careful in the groves.
See, in
And
Pierson, you could do things you couldn't do in a city, right?
that's absolutely
Yeah, you
right.
absolutely could.
Absolutely right.
You could.
Besides, we didn't lock our doors at
That
night.
was
Even
what
at
was-
night, did we?
We did not lock
No.
our doors, no.
Didn't have to
And I
lock
thought
doors.
of, it was so unique that we lived in this idyllic time. I think of it as being idyllic in that it was safe compared to what we live in
You're talking
today.
50s and 60s.
50s and 60s, because
Yeah.
I was born, and I was in elementary school in the 50s, and yet we were having these drills for the Cold War where we'd
Get
have to
under the
get
desk.
under the desk, and we'd do like this, and yet I think about that, and then when I got thinking about it, we had discussed it, and I'm thinking that really wasn't idyllic because we were afraid of World War III. But yet, it was just something that I don't know, I guess maybe when you look back on your childhood, you think things were maybe better than they really were, but I think it really was a beautiful time. And yes,
Things about it were beautiful.
Yeah, there really
And there
were.
were ugly things, like in the grocery store in town, there was a drinking fountain.
Oh, yeah.
And it had colored.
and it
on
was dirty. It was the dirty
Yeah.
one, and the
Yeah.
one that said white only was the clean new one.
pristine.
Yeah, and it was like, I remember thinking. Now that's when it really hit me because we loved the black people, that worked for us and all, and especially our maid Jeanette, who would
Helped raise.
she
raise
helped like
us,
raise
really.
us, that was difficult. And then it would be difficult when it would be pointed out to me and I'd see it like that and knowing that they couldn't go in restaurants. But it was kind of like
That was-
accepted. That was the way it was.
That was it.
We knew it was going to someday change, and we didn't know exactly when. And I wasn't, I don't know. It was a type thing that just, it was accepted, and yet we knew it wasn't right.
Didn't like
We knew
it.
it wasn't
didn't
right.
Like it.
But
didn't,
Jeanette, I have
for
to tell you
sure.
about Jeanette. She would be there. Our mother always taught school because Mother did not want her money to mix with Daddy's, but that's another story.
Yes.
And they loved each other, but it was just so funny.
She was
So
way
anyway,
ahead of
she
her
was.
time.
She was. So anyway, because a lot of women had not graduated from college, and Mother did, and Mother was like, and she was going to be pretty. She was independent, unlike Bonnie and me.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, no, she was, and so, but anyway, Jeanette would come in the mornings, help us get our breakfast, and I can remember she would make the pancakes. She would slice them just perfectly, so it stayed in an
yeah.
and it was like this perfect round pancake, only it was sliced through so we could eat it, and I guess maybe that's
And
why I'm
that's
so
pretty
particular
awful.
today.
Yeah.
I remember those.
We
She
couldn't even
was.
cut our own pancakes. See, that,
She would cut, I mean,
that
to
lets you
say
know about
that
our
your
childhood.
maid cuts your pancakes, that's
Yeah.
pretty
But there
sad.
was a closeness there.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
very much so.
Oh, I
heard
loved
that
her.
before.
I
Yeah, we loved her
very
a lot,
much.
and
think
some of
that's
the
where I
people
got
that
my
worked
accent.
in the Fern, and
Oh, like-
I remember, later on, some of the people that worked for Daddy, and Mother helped Cornell, and he was so special, and she helped him read, and he just really kind of had a learning disability about that. But
maybe that's why I went into that. I don't
yeah,
know,
it might have been.
You went into special ed.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and I was kindergarten.
Okay, you guys were both married. Y'all have children. And who are they? Where are they?
Well, we're both married to Ricks.
Yeah.
Of different, they look.
Stam
we're
and
very,
Rentz.
very close. The husbands and Bonnie and I.
Wives, yes,
Yeah, we are. We travel together. I have a boy and a girl. Pierson is my son, and he's younger.
You had to get that Pierson in there, didn't you?
And he's it was my maiden name, and so, and then Sarah is the older one, and that was named after a great grandmother way back on the Underhill side of the family. But Pierson, yeah. But so anyway, Sarah, and she is now 42, and Pierson is 39.
Where do they live?
She lives right here in DeLand with my granddaughter, Anya, who is my only granddaughter, and she's 12 years old. And then Pierson, unfortunately, well, it's not unfortunate. He and his wife are married, and they live in Portland, Oregon. There are no children. That's unfortunate to have to not have another grandchild. Bonnie is much luckier.
Yes, I had two sons. Russell Nils, who is who's 41, and Richard Andrew for A.N. Pierson. Andrew.
It's interesting how we did that.
Yes,
the names.
And he's 37, and he lives here in DeLand. And Russell, who has 3 daughters, Callie, who's 15, Sky, who is 2.5, and Aurora, who is 13 months. So, and they live in Eustis, and Russell is a teacher. So is his wife. So, anyway, so thank goodness.
What are some of your fondest memories of growing up? I mean, you grew up in a little small town, Pierson, but you also have connections to DeLand. So
very much so. Yeah,
how did that work? How often did you come here? Did you have friends?
We had in Pierson. Our social life was church and
the school.
Friday night football. We talked about, and we both were cheerleaders, and that was our sports. We decided
that
Were y'all cheerleaders at the same time?
Oh
no. I might have been junior.
I guess you were.
And then you were a senior high cheerleader for
I
a bit.
started cheering when it was Taylor High School, junior and senior high school. So I started cheering on the senior, with some senior girls when I was like 7th grade. So 7th grade all the way up through my senior year. And we had, because of such a small school, we had 6-man football.
All right, explain that.
Now, 6-man football was quite I'd never heard of it, and I still don't hear of anybody.
That was another experiment that went wrong.
But we would go on the bus, on the Yellowhound. We'd ride the bus.
Daddy and Mother would take us.
We'd ride usually, with the football team, or sometimes. And we, as a cheerleader, and we'd go to the game, we'd cheer, and then we'd go to the hospital afterwards, because they would have gotten, I don't know if it was a more rugged sport or what it was, or if they got, Bonnie said sometimes they'd go to Cedar Key and they'd get
cut by the oyster shells. So that would,
But I think some of them ended up with broken bones.
Maybe it was,
and
they didn't have weight rooms. They didn't have that type of ability to train.
Well, they had little 130-pound guys playing football.
Right, and there's only 6 men on the
And I mean, I probably weighed about
12, the 2 teams, 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was interesting.
So
We'd go to places like Williston, Bell, Cedar Key.
Cedar Key was, I think,
some
the
Archer.
furthest.
It seemed to me I remember going to
Bronson.
Okay,
not Archer,
but some of those areas, and it was just, I even remember meeting one of the gals, the cheerleaders, that was a sorority sister up at FSU when I was up there. It was just interesting, that you just, but to think playing 6-man football, and
hardly
now
anybody knows about it except those of us that
people, I don't remember,
went to schools that played
I don't think they do it anymore, because I think it just was some kind of crazy experiment.
Well,
yeah, you're right, but
yeah.
it
So
must
was
have been
football the big
division.
sport at Pierson?
No.
So what was
baseball. Baseball.
There's
Pierson was always a baseball power.
Yeah, we had guys that were just really gifted. I don't know what it was, in the water or what. But
And
we
Chipper
really
Jones, everybody remembers Chipper
Yes,
Jones, but Chipper
right.
Jones is not a Pierson person. They came from some other place. I mean, he was a fabulous baseball player with the Braves, but basically we had a lot of good players before Chipper, and he just lived
father,
there. But
they
people say,
really
"Oh, you're,"
pushed him.
So anyway.
But it does say on the Pearson sign,
that's
home of Chipper Jones, because he did live there, but he went to bowls. Ended up going to bowls.
Those were all guy sports, right?
Much.
Were there any sports for girls at that
Basketball.
point? Or was that just
I would
sort
say
of beginning?
basketball.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
had
think
some-
they had softball back then, but it was
No.
mostly basketball. We
But
had some
Bonnie
really
and
good-
I don't know, Bonnie,
I wanted to
I
be.
could have probably done it, but I felt like I wanted to be a cheerleader. And my least favorite, I loved school and I had good grades, but the worst thing was having to go to PE and dress out. It's still, I would get a B in PE if I felt lucky.
lucky to get
It was
that.
like, it was like, and Mother would, she'd even talk, Mother being a teacher, was a little
but
bit
that was-
concerned about our
good and bad.
grades. And,
Yeah.
and anyway, it was kind of funny, but we had her for a teacher. I had her for a teacher,
yeah.
and she was hard.
I did too.
She was rough on me.
I was terrible with Mother. I really was. I wanted to be one of the group and didn't want to be like I was special,
Oh,
so I
Bonnie.
acted out, worse than I would have, because I was pretty well behaved otherwise.
But she was rough. She could be real. I remember the time she asked our class to, from memory, to draw and do a sketch of the inner ear, of doing the ear. I thought, this is ridiculous. I would be
What
getting
good is
this,
that?
and I thought, what is she asking? I don't, but anyway, I thought, and then she'd do some other really unique, but she was a great teacher. I mean, the kids loved her because she'd bring in some interesting things.
Well, you
and-
two both became teachers.
Yes.
What was your feeling about that? Your experience there?
Looking back on it, it was fine. And I was kindergarten. I did early childhood in kindergarten, and then I did third grade for a little bit and was a primary resource teacher. And I think what my feeling is now, as wonderful a field as teaching and education, being an educator is, I would have probably done something else. But back in those days, and I graduated in 64 from high school and 68 from college, you were not given the opportunities that you're given today. Women weren't, and men weren't even. There weren't the fields open that there are today. And I think it was either you were a nurse of some type or in the medical field, and maybe not a doctor back then either. Women weren't, and a teacher and or a secretary in the secretarial field, business.
So
But
you're saying a lot of talented
a lot of times-
women had limited
I would have done
choices.
something else.
Yeah.
Probably none of those things. I would have done something other than, but that's not that I'm sad that I did it, because I still love children and I love, to see the progress they're making.
You said one of your sorority sisters was a big executive in what company?
Yeah, and IBM. I graduated from Stetson with her and Nancy, and she lives back here. She's lived all over the world. I mean, literally all over the world. She moved back here 2 years ago and started our sorority, our Zeta alumni, and she's gotten that going again. And
Yeah, she's a mover
she's
and a
quite
shaker. Yeah.
quite interesting. And so,
I went into speech correction, I felt like a type of education, but a little more specialized. And then I got certified in special ed and taught at Pierson only, which is sort of unusual. Pierson, and then I would go to Seville some.
Oh, yeah.
And but it was I taught for 34 years, and it was because I went into that partly. Jesse Moreland, I remember going to Stetson, and he says, there's this new part of education that's more specialized, is the specific learning disabilities.
That was really coming on.
Yes, it was real, and I was so thankful. He led me that way, and I got my certification in that, and again, taught for 34 years.
You guys both lived in Pierson and DeLand. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the town, in the main street,
Well, in Pierson,
way of life, any
actually in downtown Pierson, honestly, as far as the buildings go, and even some of the businesses, it hasn't really changed. Where the ice house was, I think I remember correctly, is now a florist supply.
So it's
with
still
flowers
kind of the same.
and different and
Ferns.
well, leather leaf mostly now, and different types of cut greens. But there's where the grocery store was that I told you about, the drinking fountains is still a grocery store, but the little shop where we got our little dresses when we were really young, the Joy Shop, is now a taco.
I've forgotten the name of it.
Taco restaurant.
So Pearson had a dress shop?
We
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
have we
Well,
didn't
we did.
have taco shops, and we
No,
didn't have
it's much more multicultural now
yeah.
downtown. Yeah.
Hispanics. We now have Hispanics
Right.
working in the fern business, and back then it was
all
African Americans
Right.
only.
So what about
Yeah.
DeLand?
Well, DeLand, to me, now it's got all these international, fantastic restaurants, but
Well, it's not New York yet.
I remember
It's not New York.
McCrory's, the dime store on one corner of New York, and Woolworth's on the other. And then we
Yeah.
had Blues Shoes, where we got all our shoes. And
What was the name of it?
Paul
Betty
Hunter's.
Drika's.
Yeah, Betty
Drika's is where we got
Yeah.
our clothes, and we take our clothes out on approval.
Didn't have to pay for 'em,
You didn't
believe
have to
any
because we
money.
knew them. I mean,
Yeah.
you knew people well enough that they would just let you take clothes out,
Yeah.
and you just get them back, and then you, if you wanted,
Decide.
you
Yeah.
could get taken, and that really is the best way to decide. I think that's the best way to decide
That's a
about a lot of
long
things.
run, right?
Yeah, it is, but you have to trust people.
well, now you have to buy them, and my husband gets so mad, and I have to just take them back. You know, you just return them.
What about movies?
Oh,
Where'd you
the
go to
Athens,
movies?
The
the Athens Theater.
Oh, and
was
also
where
the
we'd go.
drive-in.
Oh,
We
yeah.
did have
Let's
the
hear about
drive-in. That was, I think that's where Chipola Avenue is now about.
It's down where you
near
go to
Woodland Towers.
Woodland Towers.
Yeah, and we
It was
would
back
drive
in
out
there.
and we remember the
Passion
little
pit. No, I think it was called the Passion
the
pit.
coil for the mosquitoes where you'd light it, and
You
it's
put it up
probably
on the
so
dashboard.
flammable.
Car.
You
Oh,
put it
yeah.
up on the dashboard, and he'd light
Right.
it, and it would
Go
to
around,
keep the mosquitoes
and I bet it
away.
was horrible for us, breathing in that. But that was a great time, and sometimes some of us would hide in the trunk just because we wanted to get in free, just to say we did
Just
it.
to say you did it. It wasn't that you really couldn't pay for it. It was just that you wanted to do something that was a little bit not unlike what you would normally do. The Athens, though,
Yes,
which
that
I'm
was
so proud of, because it's now that we have such good shows
Beautiful
there,
theater.
and being involved with it on the board. But years ago, it used to be just this kind of, I know it wasn't anything fancy, but it's
didn't
beautiful now.
appreciate it,
You didn't
but
appreciate it. But that's where we saw, even our father, who had never gone to a movie with us, went to see the first Elvis movie.
Love Me
And that
Tender.
was, I can remember us, was
Love
that,
Me Tender?
I think it was Love Me Tender. And then,
How do you like it?
well, it was black and white, and I thought anything Elvis did was fine. It was
he
great.
like it?
Yeah, and we all thought, everybody thought Elvis was pretty great, except for,
Yeah, except for
he
the
really was.
older generation
But then
back
some
then.
of the, I'm trying to think, what other movie we would have gone to there?
Well, I think we went to see with Andy Griffith, No Time for Sergeants.
Okay.
That's about the only other movie I remember Daddy going to.
Really?
and truly.
I don't remember that
I
one.
remember that.
All right,
I think.
Now
what
that
radio station did y'all listen to?
Ape,
WAPE.
APE, the big ape.
So describe that.
Oh, that
it
was
Jacksonville.
That was an AM station.
Yes.
Covered a
Was
half-
it AM?
Yeah.
Oh, I
yeah.
thought it was an F.
And
Okay.
the biggest thing was the gorilla or the ape. That sound.
Daddy,
Every
I can-
now and then he.
I can remember us one time, we were up in North Carolina, and Mom and Daddy and Bonnie and I did not take trips very much.
Grandma,
Daddy,
wasn't Gaga there?
I don't know, but Daddy was, in agriculture and in the fern business, and you just didn't, if you were like that, you just didn't travel. You did not go.
You couldn't. No.
And because you had to be there in case, even in the summertime and all.
Right.
And
Water.
so we were up there in North Carolina, or maybe part way up there, and all of a sudden he turns on the radio and it's, and he says, oh my God, they're still here, you can still hear the gorilla,
The ape.
or the whatever,
The
the
ape.
ape, the
Yeah.
ape, yeah.
So what kind of music did they play?
Oh,
Rock and roll.
rock and
Rock
roll.
It was.
stuff?
Rock and roll.
It was all rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the teenager
Is that what pretty
station.
much everybody listened to?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
It
Yeah.
wasn't serious, I can tell you. It wasn't what
No.
we had. It
It
wasn't
was
the
a fun-
opportunities we have today, which
No.
it's,
Oh, what Sirius XM? No.
to
what is
me,
Sirius
the
XM?
greatest, one of the biggest changes in the short amount of time, and I consider a life a short amount of time, it really is, is the communication differences. And that we
That's
had,
obvious,
I
yeah.
remember going to FSU and seeing the computer, and having the computer cards that for my classes, and they were those big punch
yeah.
cards, and the computer took up the big room.
A room, yeah.
And then today, being able to put all that in an iPhone
iPad,
and
yeah.
just on a computer, a much smaller computer, and seeing the difference in Pierson today is probably seeing people walking around holding these devices.
And
That's the
everything.
big difference in the
Communication
world
with
today.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. No difference. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, it's
that people, which is unfortunate because they don't communicate with each other.
face to face as much.
Yeah.
And they say things that they wouldn't say if they were face to face. But a lot of people.
That's an interesting point.
Well, it's just, I think
So
there
different.
are a lot of advantages to iPhones, and there are a lot of advantages to all that, but I think there are drawbacks, there are disadvantages, because you do need to talk and communicate. And I think, well, as a teacher, as a kindergarten teacher, I would always remember that, working with little kids.
Yeah, the language.
5-year-olds, the language, and how important and language development is. And if you don't, and I was always interested in going in, and being involved with language development. And I just think that's what's so hard, that people, I don't know what it'll be like in 50 years when we're gone.
If that will have had a
I
great
don't know.
impact on learning.
It has made
and
a lot of good impact, though, really, truly.
able to find out information just like that. You can just
Oh,
say
it's
that
fabulous. I can
Siri
Google
and
anything.
all that. Yeah.
I was wanting to figure out when asparagus plumosus started, the 1905, when they were growing that.
That was the
and then leatherleaf, this is for fern, cut greens. And now they do a lot of other things. They do leatherleaf, they do aspidistra, different things, and we have
all different.
But and leatherleaf, I think it was in the 50s or 60s is when it became a real cash crop. I mean, it
And
just
Daddy
ballooned.
sort of resisted it. I think because of
he resisted a lot
the
of things.
beginning of the asparagus for the Piersons, and much to our dismay, he resisted. I mean, we wish he would. Yeah.
Did he eventually go with?
Oh yeah, he did.
Yeah, he
you
did, but
had
he
to,
never
but
was
did.
one of those that made the big push and did not
Well, the
develop
thing
it.
is, too, he had one company he supplied, whereas these, others, A.N. Pierson. That's all.
And he only had 2
ever
girls.
shipped
He
to.
didn't have a son to leave it to.
And he
either.
didn't tell
That was his
and
big-
he didn't tell the girls much. I mean, he
didn't
let
tell
me
us
go with him
much at
some, but
all.
he kept us sort of in a
Well,
Go back
ivory
to the fern
tower.
for a second. Like in the 80s, it was that really serious freeze.
Mhm.
Killed a lot of citrus trees.
that was
it really
I'm
did.
sure it had a big effect on the fern. What do you remember
Oh, yeah.
about that?
Well, it had
It
that
was
on the
It
citrus
was
too.
It was
On the
a
citrus.
frightening time because that's anyone that's in agriculture. I think it's one of the most difficult professions, really, to to be in because you live and die by the
You know,
weather.
we have understood it. Bonnie and I, being the co-owners, have understood it the
What-
last 2
lots
years.
better.
With Hurricane Matthew, we had damage to our fernery. I had Farm Bureau, had to file a claim, we did, and we got money and had the fernery rebuilt. But then, of course, that was more, you know, it was just that it cost more than we got from Farm Bureau. So that, of course, was difficult when you're doing that. And then this year with Irma, we have
we had to file
damage,
another
and
claim.
so I had to file another claim. And Bonnie and I were up there, and we were looking at it, and we have money, and that will be repaired at some point.
That will have to be paid.
But they have to immediately, and we do have the original fernery, and we do have, and Lars Hegstrom, one of the Hegstroms, and the Hegstrom is an old family, goes way back in Pierson.
Yes.
And he, Lorna Jean is his mother, and Morris is his father. And Daddy set it up so he would lease the fernery before he died. And so we still honor that, and he you know, and so we lease it to him, and he
wonderful.
yeah, it has been a good, because he takes such good care of it, and just like Daddy would.
One thing, speaking of agriculture and the impact it has when there's a disaster, is I remember something we hadn't even thought about was the glass houses that Peter had grew some of his flowers in and things, and a hailstorm one time, and it was just these huge pieces of the hail that came down and just obliterated the glass houses.
The glass house.
I mean, it was just
it was awful.
And so that had to be
I think you
rebuilt.
said one of the original greenhouses is still there.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah,
That's the one.
Yeah.
The glass house, and the mother had it rebuilt after she
we
got
were
out
down.
of school, retired from school, and then she didn't ever really do anything with it. But I remember years back when we would ship, what was it, philodendron. We'd put it in. And
that's
ship
what we're
that.
going to try and redo in the glass house, and then and it just didn't work. And you and I one time wanted to do Gerbera daisies.
Gerbera daisies. Bonnie and I had this brilliant idea.
But we had all these marvelous
We always
ideas,
would,
but it
you
never
have
went.
to experiment like you're
I
doing.
know,
really
but
do.
we don't have the push that he did. The I guess the desire.
Well, and
or
we're
as
not.
much.
You have to be of the age. You have to have a reason. You know, and you have to. And we love to travel.
We had children too.
Where have y'all been?
Oh,
all over.
Name your
everywhere.
top
Israel.
Italy.
Israel's probably in
Greece.
Egypt, or probably some of mine.
Yeah,
I mean,
Egypt,
it was fabulous. But we've done Greece. We've done. I mean, it's just Spain. I've just got, you know.
The Danube. We had the
Danube was
cruising, which the smaller cruises in in
the river
Eastern
cruise,
Europe,
and then we were in France last
Prague,
year, up
yeah.
and down the Seine and the Rhone. We went down the Rhone, and it just where else have we
we've
been?
been
Bonnie?
very
the
blessed
Baltic,
being able to do that. Yeah,
the Baltics. That was great.
yeah. And we're going to go to Spain in March.
To Venice.
2018.
To Venice on a
March,
You
ship.
go
Spain.
together?
Oh yeah,
Many times, yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah.
do a lot.
I love New York. We do
Where
that.
else do we? Yeah, we love to go
Yeah.
to New York. I said, yeah. The land's great, but it's not New York. But it's
No.
it's nice to go to New York for about
it's-
4 days or 5 days.
But
it's sure
great
nice to
come
get home. And we do, it's just to have that experience. And I think we did that for my special birthday last year. We won't say which one.
We took the
but you can
grandchildren,
imagine
the older
we took
grandchildren.
Bonnie, and
My
I said, Bonnie, I
oldest.
know what I want to do for that birthday. And I said, I want you and Callie, her granddaughter, 15-year-old. And I want Sarah, my daughter, and Anya, my granddaughter, my 11, well, she was 11 then, she's 12 now, year-old granddaughter to go to New York for 5 days.
Yeah.
And we saw plays, and we let the girls, of course, we saw.
We decided we're going to go back, but
Yeah.
it's just going to be the two of us.
It's just going to be the two of us, because we want to go to all the museums. The girls were so busy on their devices at night that they
They wouldn't get up in the morning.
get up in the
Did
morning.
y'all get into Hamilton?
No.
No, we did Matilda, because that was Anya had me read that book, Matilda the Roald Doll, and it was closing January.
And
No, I
then
think it closed before January. And then we went to Lion King. That's
which was
fabulous.
wonderful.
And I
Yeah.
thought, because Anya had done that in theater camp, she'd been in a Lion King thing. So it was picked, for them.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were going to leave advice for a young person today, what would you say?
Oh, gosh.
I would say set goals for yourself and shoot for them. And just stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, and hopefully have a spiritual base. That's one of the most important things.
I think
It's hard. There's so many things,
Yeah, that's hard. I would say, to be honest, I would like people to be honest to yourself always. You can't, and there are people that aren't, and I think I don't know, I just feel that you have to have faith, and I am a Christian, and I'm very proud of that, and I would love, to be remembered as being a Christian, and I'd love to be remembered as being a fun-loving person, and there's certainly nothing, but I'd also like to be remembered as an honest, caring person, and
yeah. Well,
I mean, my sister and I are we really have not argued. We have not fought.
No.
And I don't know, we never did talk about the bad accident that Bonnie was in, but when she was
13,
younger.
when I was 13,
And
but
if I had lost her, I had lost her, I don't know how I would have gotten through the things with Mother and Daddy when their dementia set in later, because it was just, we've been just so close. And that just, to me, you just have to have something to hang on to, but you do need to be true to yourself.
Family is so very important, yes. And
we are very close as a
as far
family, and
as
our kids are.
what I would like to be remembered for is hopefully that I was loving and joyful and a peaceful person, and that, again, fun, but that remembered, and not with tears, but with like, boy, I wish you were here.
Thank y'all today for enlightening us on the DeLand Pierson connection.
A bit, yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Well,
Thank you.
Okay.